Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Calling All Angels, where we ask people to come on the show to promote everybody helping each other and to help us realize our callings and just to elevate God. And today on our show, we have Teen Challenge from Providence, which is actually a women's teen challenge, and we're really excited to introduce today Kayla and Kiana. How are you guys doing today?
Great, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having us. It's such a blessing to be able to just really speak out. And
I'm excited to have you. And you guys came all the way from Providence.
We did.
And how far of a drive is that for you?
It's about an hour.
An hour? Mm-hmm. Nice. Now, Teen Challenge, how long have you been in Teen Challenge?
I have been in the program for almost 11 months.
Okay, great.
I've been there for a little over 13.
13 months and 11 months. And the program runs for how long?
15 months.
15 months. Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. So can you tell us a little bit about the program? How does it work?
It is, like she just said, a 15-month faith-based, Christ-centered program for anyone with any life-controlling issue. Mostly people who come in, it is for drug and alcohol addiction, but for anxiety, depression, eating disorders, anything along those lines that can really just take your life over, they accept people in for that. And we have a lot of Christ-centered curriculum, which we follow. It's very structured. We wake up at 6 o'clock every single morning, 5:45 sometimes, and our whole day is just based around having chapel times. We have different activities throughout the day that really just help us connect with God and different things we do.
I did not know. I thought it was just like drugs and alcohol that they did, but it's wow.
We actually don't spend any time really talking about the alcohol or the drug use or the life-controlling issue that you're there for, simply because that's not really the issue. The issue is a sin problem. It's just the way that it manifests in each one of our lives, and unfortunately, it's a sin that's a little bit harder to get rid of because it comes with a lot of smaller habitual sins. So we don't focus any time on giving any power to the type of addiction or life-controlling issue we have. We spend all of our time focusing on the cure for it, which is solely the Lord Jesus Christ.
Wow, that's very informative. I've never heard it put that way. That's beautiful and it's perfect. So tell me a little bit about yourselves. Would you like to go first, Kayla?
Sure.
Okay, tell us how you ended up there.
So I fell into a heroin addiction, which I got into I'm sorry.
No, oh my gosh, no, you're absolutely fine. It's really hard to talk about the things that almost suffocate us and take our breaths away. It literally takes our breath away when we talk about how absorbed we can get into stuff like that when we don't have God. So it's okay to have your breath taken away. Just focus on God and where you're at now. Did you want to talk a little bit about how you?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay.
So I actually grew up under the care of a mother who was an addict. She was an opiate addict, and I suffered a lot of neglect because of that. She definitely tried. She attempted to be a good mother, and I know that she loved me, but she was just so handicapped because of her addiction that she didn't really know how to show love to her children. I had a lot of behavioral issues, and when I was 18, I actually ended up leaving her home, lying to my entire family, saying that I was going to be living with a friend, taking college classes, but in reality, I had become homeless. I was living in my car. I was very prideful. I wanted it to seem like I was better off without her.
Sure.
So I went out and I started drinking and getting high just to really fill that void that was inside of me from all of just feeling rejected and feeling like I wasn't loved enough to be wanted around. I fell really hard into committing crimes to get money, and through my homelessness, I met a man who was mutually homeless. We started living together. We were living in motel rooms. We were sleeping in my car, and he had introduced me to heroin, which seemed to just completely take away all those feelings that I felt, the rejection, that just longing for something, not knowing what it was, but knowing that it was there, and that I wanted something to fill that. We got so bad so fast. Like I said, we were committing crimes. He became very mentally controlling, physically, emotionally. I felt like I was trapped, like I was never going to get out of there, but there was no way out. I had burned all my bridges. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a job. I couldn't go anywhere without him. And I had nowhere to go because everybody thought that I was doing well, when in reality I was just living this huge lie. And I was stuck. I thought that was going to be my life forever. I was going to be a heroin addict who was hopeless and depressed and cut off from their family and had no friends, and I never thought that I could be anything more than that at all. And I was so just stuck in myself. And I was so longing for something to get me out of there, but I didn't know what that would be. And there was actually a situation one time when we went to his parents' house, and we were trying to get money to go out and get high, of course, and we told them it was for something stupid, to get gas for my car. And his dad came over with a Bible and asked me if I wanted to live like that forever, and I swore that I didn't know what he was talking about, but he asked me if I wanted to know Jesus, and he told me everything that Jesus could do for me. He had actually gone through a program a lot like Teen Challenge about 30 years ago, I think. He was an alcoholic, and he told me how he had been completely delivered, and I didn't believe any of it. I thought he was crazy. I was like, I'm totally fine, but you're nuts. But something that he said really stuck with me, because I ended up just crying out and being like, Jesus, if you're real and if you're really there, help me, get me out of here. I don't want to do this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. And so a couple weeks later, we were actually planning to leave the state because of some investigations that were going on and some issues that we were facing. And the morning that we were getting ready to leave, there was a knock on the door, and we were surrounded by the police, which was not what I had in mind when I asked God to get me out of there.
Right?
But I know now that was really the answer to that prayer. We were both taken into custody. He is still in prison to this day, and I pray that God really gets a hold of him. But I was released, and I didn't really understand why. That was the hand of God right there, that nothing really came of that, but God obviously had a bigger plan. I knew that there was something more to life at this point. Like, there was just this thing planted within me, and I ended up going to my father's church, and his pastor is a former addict, and she just was so full of joy when I asked her to help me, and she referred me to Teen Challenge, and that's how I got here.
Wow, that's a great story.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to backtrack for a second.
Sure.
Do you remember what the gentleman said to you that really stuck with you? You said that he brought out the Bible and he was talking about Jesus, and you said something really stuck with you. Do you remember maybe what that was, or it was just the whole thing?
I don't think it's anything that he said. I think it was more so just the overall concept that he gave me of,
right,
I'm stuck. And I didn't tell him that, he just knew. He knew that I was stuck.
Right.
And I didn't know how he knew that.
God.
And I was like, all right, Jesus, if I can really get out of this, I want to get out of this. And I didn't really believe in God. It didn't make sense to me, which was the biggest issue that I faced with coming to God, was that I didn't understand it, but something sat well inside of me. It just, something felt right.
So a seed got planted.
The seed was planted, exactly.
That's amazing, because sometimes you'll approach somebody and you're trying to plant a seed and you never know if it's going to take root or if you're actually doing it. So here's a situation where you probably walked out and he's probably thinking, I tried. And he actually, in a way, saved you.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Yay. And you've been there for 11 months? Or?
Yes.
That's great. How do you like it?
I absolutely love it, and it's the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. It's just so full of love, and the women are so welcoming, and it's just so great being in a setting where, like she said, we don't talk about the addiction that we came from. Sure, there are some times that we have to face it, like when someone's having a rough time, but our curriculum isn't based around how to get free from your addiction. It's how to get out of your sin. And it's so freeing not having to get up and be, hi, I'm Kayla, I'm an addict. It's, hi, I'm Kayla, I'm a child of God. I'm free. I'm not bonded by anything. Wow. And it's just so incredible to be in a setting where we can really just focus all our energy on building a relationship with Him instead of focusing all our energy on not getting high.
Right. And you had mentioned earlier that it's sin, that it doesn't matter what kind of sin it is. It's just the sin that sucks us down. And sin, it's all selfishness. The other word for sin is selfishness. And I know that probably hurts some people listening, but that's what it is. It all comes down to selfishness. When we stop living for ourselves and start living for God, that whole selfishness just disappears. And life is so much better. And you look beautiful.
Thank you.
And I would never guess that you went through such trauma, but look at you, a child of God.
It's amazing.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
And would you like to share yours, Kiana?
Sure. So I've been in this program a little over 13 months. It's the 7th program I've been in. I've been using non-marijuana, meaning anything besides that, only for about 6 years, and about 5.5 out of those 6 years I've been in rehab pretty much the whole time. My mother and father are both addicts. My mother was a heroin addict, and she used her whole pregnancy. And my father was primarily a methamphetamine addict. He was an immigrant from Canada. And when they met, it just kind of sparked off this, tumultuous relationship. It was really hard for them, especially growing up in an era where the crack and the heroin had really hit the streets of smaller big cities. And so she was already in the grips of addiction in her teenage years, and continued. Nothing was really good enough to get her sober. And because of that addiction, I not only was born premature, but I also spent my first year in detox in a hospital. And when I was released, I was given back to my parents. The childhood safety laws and such, I don't think were nearly as strict as they are now. And so I went back to my parents' care, but because of their addiction, I was just constantly in and out of foster care, all of which were really abusive. I have an older sister. She and I were split. We were separated, and she went to my grandmother, and I went to my grandmother's sister, so my great aunt and uncle. And even as a young child, I remember feeling like everything was just really pointless. Life really had no substance to it. I never really felt extreme joy. Even as a little kid, you see the kids playing around in the schoolyards, and I just never felt that way. I felt like I was always a lot older beyond my years, that that everybody else was misled, that they didn't really see what life really was for what it is. But my parents who took me in, they were great parents. You know, they let me succeed in doing everything, anything I wanted to do, you know, dance or singing or theater, whatever I wanted to do, they were 100% supportive, and I was a really gifted child, so I succeeded in pretty much everything I tried. I was really intelligent. I started singing when I was 4, so that was a gift that was given to me that I really pursued my whole life. And although I did well in everything that I tried, nothing ever really filled that hole of like rejection or just feeling unwanted or unloved. My mom was in and out of prison my whole life. And my father was deported when I was 5. When my mother and father got divorced, she had accused him of molesting my sister and I, which was not the case, and the result of that was him being deported. And it's something I still kind of grieve over. I haven't spoken to him or seen him since. But in high school, I signed my first major label record contract, and I was dropped very quickly after that. And that kind of added to those feelings. And you know, I've known that I've been an addict for a long time. This isn't my first addiction. And if looking back now, if I don't get it right now, it certainly could not be my last. In high school, I was severely bulimic, lost a lot of weight, went off to college. In college, I just didn't do as well as I thought I would in school. And because of that, I started partying. I didn't drink, but I dove like headfirst into Percocet, and within 6 months, I was a full-blown IV heroin addict. I came home on spring break one year, and I told my dad that I had to leave school, that it wasn't school for me. I didn't understand why I was pursuing a life of just meaningless, just to live for nothing. It just didn't make any sense to me. And so I went off to my first program, and I got sober, and I decided to move out to California. And I was sober for a year, but still always kind of felt like, what am I really working for? Like, what am I really working towards? And the lies and the thoughts started, you know, creeping back in. And when I relapsed, I picked up methamphetamines instead of heroin, which I had never tried. And it ruined my life. I know that we talk about, you know, drugs are, you know, evil. Like, look at what it's done to the country and the statistics. But when you're looking at the category of drugs, I saw things I couldn't have even imagined that people did when they were on methamphetamines. It brought me to such a lower place than any other drug had ever brought me to. And within a couple of short months, I was not only homeless, I was living in a tent under a highway overpass outside of San Francisco airport. I had dropped down to maybe 100 pounds. I was wearing kids' clothes. And I just woke up one morning, and I knew that, I just knew, like, in my heart, I had a very small frame window of me getting out of what I was in. I couldn't understand how I'd let my life get like that. I couldn't understand how I had become okay with letting that be everything that I strove for, you know, not living any type of life. Like, I knew that if I didn't pull myself out of it, I was going to be another unnamed person you hear about in the newspaper whose body they found on the side of a road. And so I called home, and I hadn't spoken to my parents in weeks. They had private investigators looking for me, and I was a missing person at the time. And I told them I was coming home and that I was ready to be done with my life. But when I came home, I just picked up heroin again. I was just so reckless and just so unhappy and so broken and couldn't figure out why. looking back now, I can recognize that moment that I heard, like, this is your only chance to get out of it. Like, I look back now, and I believe it's the first time that I audibly heard God speak to me and reach into my life and interfere, because I wasn't recognizing any of the other signs. But I knew that even though I didn't physically hear this message, I knew what I was being told. I didn't have any opportunities left. I had to get out now. And I did. And I came home and, I picked up heroin again. And it was one night that I was just really out of my mind. And I remember my mom giving me a Change Lives book, which is what we sell on choirs to share these testimonies of hope and tell people about this program. And I had a brother who had passed away from a heroin overdose, and he had been debating whether or not he was going to come into Teen Challenge. And my parents had given me this book, and I looked at the website a little bit. And Father's Day of last year, I just decided, I don't care how it got me in the program. I don't care if I was sober-minded or, just high and delusional. I don't really care. I know that the Lord works everything out for the good for people who are called according to his purpose. And I know that even that high and that stupor that I was in was turned around and used to get me through the doors of this program. And I told all my friends I was going to Jesus camp. That was kind of how I dealt with the unknown. It's the only thing I hadn't tried. I figured, I knew I needed long term. I knew that I'd never tried faith-based, and my mom had just told me her whole life that, like, Jesus was her friend and spoke to her, and I thought it was crazy. But looking back now, I can see that my parents especially were like the best imitators of Christ in my life. They really were. And coming into this program, a lot of people don't understand that. Most of the staff have been through it. Most of the staff that are there were actually a student in the program. And I came in and they gave me a Bible, and we had our chapel times and our prayer times, and the work that we do is constantly putting you in the Word. What does the Word say about this type of sin, or what does it say about this quality that you have? And in the first couple of days, I just felt so at peace, and I started to understand that there was a bigger purpose to life that was going on. So now looking back, I just realized that he took all of that bad to put me where I am here today. And I'm just so grateful that he was able to take everything that happened that the enemy intended, to take me out, to put me in a place where he's able to prepare me and draw a personal relationship. And now I can go out and minister to other people who are in that same
That's amazing.
place.
So I know that Teen Challenge actually offers a future to you, right?
Absolutely.
So what do you see in your futures?
So I don't know exactly where I'm going to go afterwards, but I know that God has really just burdened my heart, like she said, with the people that are still stuck out there, still trying to fill that void that we feel that we think are gonna be filled by substances and the lifestyle that just is completely unsatisfying.
Right.
And I dream of just being able to work in ministry and reach out to people and bring people in, those that are on the streets, those that are in shelters, and just reach out and show them the love of Jesus and show them that things don't have to be like that.
Because you love them. They're your brothers and your sisters.
Absolutely.
And you want to save them. It's not about you anymore. It's about God and other people. So I think that's amazing. And how about you? The same thing? Or do you have something else that you are striving to do?
As of right now, I know that the Lord has really spoken to me about full-time ministry.
Yes.
I'm hoping to stay for the 6-month internship at the end of my program, and he's really burned me just with people who don't have that available to them, you know, to break those chains or those bondages, to go out and tell people about the God that saved my life, that can save you from anything that you're struggling with. So
Yes, it's so important because you know, people don't realize that, and they don't realize that even if they don't have money, sometimes they can still get into Teen Challenge like this, and it completely transforms your life and who you are, and actually your entire future. Now you can live forever, you know. So I think that's an amazing thing too, that you can apply for grants, or they will take care of you even if you can't afford to go there. And yes, and that's why we ask for everybody's supports. We're asking if anybody watching feels compelled to help, that maybe you could donate towards Teen Challenge. The website is up on screen, and you know, also if you know of anybody struggling with addiction, we also ask that you would have them contact Teen Challenge and send them to Teen Challenge. And so I want to thank you both so much for coming, and you've been a blessing to me, and hopefully someday we can get you at our church.
Absolutely.
That'd be wonderful. You guys have a choir, so I'm excited about that. And yes, thank you ladies so much. You've been such a blessing to me, and I'm sure to everybody watching. And again, we thank you for joining us for another episode of Calling All Angels, and we look forward to seeing you next week. All right, take care. God bless.